Play. All right, morning, guys. Good morning again. We are here again this morning. We are going to be reading our book, Grace Under Fire. We have an objective to finish reading this book by at least the end of next week because we have some others that are waiting in the wings for us to read. And so we have to get on with it. All right. So those of you who have been following me as I read, each day. We are on to chapter 20 of the book Grace Under Fire. We saw her yesterday. Yesterday, Isabel is on the flight to Scotland where she's going to claim some inherited property that her great uncle has left in a will for her. She's traveling to Scotland. Now, we were expecting her to travel to Scotland with Dylan, her friend, but she has decided on a short whim to go all by herself, all because she's upset that she has finally slept with Michael, and Michael is engaged to Amanda, and she's now feeling some type of way because she believes that after having slept with Michael, maybe Michael should show more interest in her, considering that he has expressed such delight at um, having slept with her and how wonderful the experience was. But she has another guest coming because not because you sleep with a man doesn't mean he wants you. Sex to a man is just sex. Women, we get emotionally attached to a penis. Men do not get that emotionally attached to a vajayjay. So that is that. So Isabel is on her way to Scotland on her own, and we are going to be reading what happens next. So, chapter 20 of the book Grace Under Fire by Julie Garwood. The morning after wasn't pretty. It was a little before noon Sunday morning when Nick, bleary eyed from playing poker until dawn and drinking way too much beer, walked into the kitchen in search of caffeine. Noah and Michael were sitting at opposite ends of the table. Michael was reading an article on Dylan's laptop, and Noah was slumped over the table, guzzling orange juice. Feeling dehydrated, he had already gulped down 2 large bottles of water. Neither Nick nor Noah had showered or shaved yet. They both felt as bad as they looked. Michael, on the other hand, looked as though he were ready for a photo shoot. He had showered, shaved, and wore crisp khaki pants and a dark blue polo shirt. Unlike Nick and Noah, Michael had on shoes. He was the only one in the room without bloodshot eyes, but then he had known when to stop drinking. Nick found a clean mug, filled it with coffee, and took a drink. Then leaned back against the island and said, "What in God's name was I thinking?" Michael understood what he was asking and answered, "You thought you could keep up with the McAllisters?" "A rookie mistake," he added, flashing a grin. "If they stayed an entire week, we'd all need liver transplants," Noah said, his voice a scratchy whisper. "The last time I drank this much was when I was at the university, and that was a long, long time ago." "Same here," Nick said. "I forgot how bad a hangover can be. This is brutal." He dragged the chair out and sat down at the table. "Where is everyone?" Michael answered, "Laurent, Kate, and Jordan left a while ago with Mom and Dad." "Where were they going?" Noah asked as he yawned. "I don't know. I didn't ask. Michelle and Theo left for the airport real early." "Yeah," Noah agreed. "I was going to bed when Theo was coming down with his luggage." Nick sat staring off into space while he waited for the coffee and the 2 aspirins he had taken to kick in so he'd start feeling human again. "Good afternoon," Reagan called from the doorway. She walked into the kitchen, looked at Nick and Noah, and started laughing. Have a little too much had a little bit too much fun last night. "Last night actually ended this morning," Michael told her. "We all stayed up way too late. Isabel was the smart one. She left the party around 11. "Why so early?" Michael asked. "I believe Amanda had a little something to do with Isabel taking off." She then told them about the conversation Amanda had had with Isabel. She said, "What?" Michael shouted. He was furious. Reagan patiently repeated, "Amanda asked Isabel to sing at your wedding," she said. "Michael and I would just love it if you did." According to Isabel, those were Amanda's exact words. "You are engaged now?" Noah asked. If you are, I think you should know you are marrying a real bitch." Nick nodded in agreement. "You don't belong with her." Michael was outraged. "I'm not marrying Amanda. We haven't been involved in a long while. Honest to God, I don't know what I ever saw in her." "She obviously isn't ready to move on," Nick said. "Why did you invite her to the party anyway?" "I don't even know." Michael shoved the chair back and stood, muttering an expletive. "How did Isabel react to Amanda's question?" Nick asked. "Yeah, what did she say?" Noah wanted to know. "She said, 'I don't do weddings.'" Then she laughed. "That's our girl," Nick said. "She's not your girl," Michael snapped. "She sure as hell isn't yours either," Noah retorted. Dylan had been standing in the doorway listening to the conversation. Shaking his head, he looked at Michael and said, "You dumbass." Michael con- Michael surprised everyone when he nodded in agreement. He needed to talk to Isabel as soon as possible. He owed her an apology. He knew she had to be angry and hurt. The look on her face when he stupidly told her he shouldn't have touched her said just as much. Yeah, he really was a dumbass. "As soon as she comes down, I'll talk to her," Michael said. Reagan shook her head. "She isn't here. She went back to the Hamilton last night." Before Michael could react, Dylan asked, "How did she get back to the hotel? Did someone drive her? Or did she borrow a car?" "Oh, God, she didn't drive, did she?" "Calm down, Reagan. Car services drove her. Security was waiting for her. And after she was safely back in her suite, I was notified. She's fine." "I've really got to go for a drive with this woman," Noah said. "She can't possibly be as bad as you guys say she is." The men continued to talk, but Michael wasn't paying attention. He was thinking about Isabel. He needed to see her. His apology had to be given face to face. Hopefully, by the time he got to the hotel, he would find the right words to repair the damage he had done. Reagan was on her way upstairs to wake Alec and to start packing for their trip back to Chicago when someone started pounding on the front door. As soon as she opened the door, the young man blurted, "My name is Everett Redmond. I'm a tech with the FBI lab, and it's urgent that I see Special Agent Buchanan. Is he here? I was told he was staying until Monday. God, I hope he's here." "Yes, he is," Reagan said and pointed the way. "He's in the kitchen. You can't, She didn't finish her sentence because the man was already gone. Nick was surprised to see the tech. Everett was young and eager and brilliant in his area of expertise. He was usually laid back, but not today. His face was red and he was panting. Both Nick and Noah were wide awake now. "What's going on, Everett?" Nick asked. Dylan looked perturbed by the intrusion. "Who is this guy?" "Well, his name is Everett Redmond," Noah answered, "and he's one of the best techs in the lab." Everett was focused on Nick. "You need to see this, sir. You drove all the way out here to—" Nick began. "Sir, you need to see this now." The urgency in his voice was palpable. Everett held up the flash drive Nick had given him. "I cleaned this up, got all the blood off. There wasn't any corruption at all. When I was checking it, I thought I'd find some audio of Isabel singing. She's quite the rage now, and I love her voice." Everett was talking so fast, Nick raised a hand to slow him down. "It's okay that you listened to her sing, but that's just it. There wasn't any singing. This doesn't belong to her," he said as he handed the flash drive to Nick. "But it's all about her, or it's all about Grace Isabel McKenna." "There were 3 full pages of instructions and information," he continued, "and there's a timetable. It has a lot of personal information on her and her schedule, beginning with the day and time of her graduation, her stay in Boston, and her flight information to Glasgow, including a list of hotels where she'll be staying in Scotland. You'll notice a number in the left-hand corner of the first page, 100,000. I thought that's what you'll pay. Nick inserted the flash drive into the laptop. Everett scrolled down to the last page and pointed to the screen. The last line is underlined. They want it done as soon as possible. There's a bonus if it's done before her birthday, June 22nd. What the hell, sir? I think it's a kill order. OMG. So somebody is plotting to take Isabel's life. And I believe that this is because of all that land she has inherited in Scotland. Somebody in Scotland wants that land. And so they are plotting, I believe, to take Isabel out of the picture. We are going to continue reading because this chapter 20 has only taken us 10 minutes. So we are going to continue reading chapter 21. So come on with me, guys. Let us continue. Michael was in a panic and trying not to let it show. He had to make sure Isabel was safe. He had a plan. He was going to call Isabel, tell her to stay in her suite with the door locked, and not let anyone in until he got there. OMG. But guess what? Isabel is already on a flight to Scotland. But Michael doesn't know it. You see, sometimes we get angry and we do things, and sometimes it is to our own detriment. So she is thinking that because she's angry at Michael because of what Amanda said to her and how he treated their sexual encounter so nonchalantly, that she's just going to pack up and not even take Dylan with her anymore to go to Scotland to go take over this land that her great uncle has died and left for her. She's just going to go all by herself. And now they have discovered a plot for her murder. But she's already on a flight on her own. Let's continue. Once he had her, he wasn't going to let her go until the bastards out there who wanted to hurt her were apprehended or killed. At the moment, he was voting for the second solution. It took only one phone call to find out she had checked out of the hotel in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning to be exact. One of the Hamilton lemos had driven her to the airport. Where in God's name has she gone? Isabel wasn't scheduled to leave for Glasgow until Monday. She had obviously changed her plans. She hadn't taken an early morning flight to Glasgow. He had checked. Had she gone home to Silver Springs and put a trip to Scotland on hold? Dylan had the answer. He knew that Isabel wouldn't go anywhere without telling her sister. He called Kate and asked her if she had checked her messages today. Not yet, she told him. Why? We were in church, and now we are in a restaurant with my parents and some of their friends. I'll check them when I get back. I need you to check now and tell me if Isabel sent you a text. Kate excused herself from the table and walked out into the restaurant's foyer. Is something wrong? Dylan planned to tell her everything when he got back to Nathan's Bay, but not now. Michael wants to know. He didn't mention why. While he waited, Kate scrolled through her messages. There was a text from Isabel that she had sent at 5:20 that morning. Kate couldn't believe what she was reading, and she didn't take her sister's news at all well. Oh my God, she doesn't even have a hotel room booked. What could she be thinking? She asked her husband. Why couldn't she wait until Monday to fly to Glasgow? I had her schedule all set and her hotel rooms reserved. A hotel room was the least of her worries, Dylan thought, but didn't say. Send me the text. We'll talk about Isabel later. He disconnected the call before she could ask any more questions. Kate sent him a text, and he read it out aloud. Okay, that's good, Michael said. Whoever wants her out of the way thinks she's still here on Nathan's Bay, right? According to the instructions in that order, they think she's leaving for Glasgow on Monday. Who the hell puts a plan like that on a flash drive? Dylan wondered, shaking. his head. Maybe someone who thinks others are less likely to see it, Nick speculated. I hope to God she hasn't called the attorney or anyone else. If that son of a bitch, Reed, calls her and she tells him where she is. Michael stopped, took a deep breath, trying to get his anger under control, then said, I'm going to get her. I thought you might, Noah said. He pulled his laptop out in front of him and quickly looked for flights to Edinburgh. There's one leaving this evening, but it's booked. Can you get him on? Nick asked. Yeah, I can. I'll call Kemper. He picked up his cell phone and asked Michael, Do you have your passport with you? Yes. He never left home without it. Dylan could see the anxiety on Michael's face and said, She's going to be all right. Yeah. How do you know that? Do the math, he said. Her plane took off at 5:30 this morning, and it's a 6-hour flight. She arrived in Edinburgh at 11:30 this morning at our time. So she's just getting off the plane. It's 4:30 in the afternoon here. She hasn't been there long enough for anyone to get to her. It was a prayer and a hope, but Michael wanted to believe the men who were after her didn't know she was in Edinburgh. Nick held out his hand. Dylan, give me your cell phone. I'll see if I can reach her. Everyone in the room watched in silence as Nick held the phone to his ear. After several anxious seconds, he handed the phone back to Dylan. Her phone isn't connected. Oh, oh my God. Isabel wasn't making it easy for them to find her. She had probably forgotten to turn on her phone when she got off the plane. And if that was the case, as soon as she did turn it on, Nick would track her. Everyone believed Isabel wasn't in any immediate danger. Everyone but Michael, and each had a theory as to her whereabouts. Noah thought she might have checked into a hotel near the airport and was so exhausted she went to bed. With Everett's help, he gained access to her credit card account but found no charges had yet been made. Dylan was hopeful. He had given Isabel the name of the company that supplied drivers throughout Scotland and knew they had offices in Edinburgh. If she was being sensible, if she was being sensible, why does he say if she was being sensible? If she was being sensible, she had contacted one of them, and now a driver was responsible for her. 3 phone calls later, however, his hopes were dashed when he found out she hadn't hired a driver. She had rented a car without GPS. Oh my God. And had taken off for parts unknown. I feel so nervous for Isabel. Remember they say how Isabel drives crazy? She doesn't stop for stop signs. She doesn't slow down. She just drives like a mad woman. And they're all scared of driving with her. But here she is in Scotland, renting a car and driving on her own, a car without GPS. Where is she going? You know, these stories always take you in twists and turns. I hope she doesn't have an accident. At that news, Dylan started praying for the people of Scotland too. Michael's outlook was even more pessimistic. He thought Isabella might have driven into the North Sea. Driving up into the Highlands all alone was just plain crazy. He pictured her trying to navigate those narrow roads in Scotland and shuddered. That wasn't his only worry. There were also the overzealous fans who all wanted a piece of her. If she was recognized and there had been so much internet exposure after her performance with EXO, he was sure she'd be run over. The Buchanan kitchen quickly turned into an operations room, each of the men making calls to anyone who could help locate Isabel. Nick and Noah even had the FBI's contacts in Scotland and England searching for her. With all of their resources, they were confident she would be found quickly. When they had done all they could to reach her, they faced the biggest worry of all. Who was after her? And why? The bloody device was in her pocket, and she obviously hadn't known it was there. The only conclusion that made any sense was that Walsh had somehow put it there. A close examination of the video confirmed it. Nick had saved it on his phone and played it for the others. Rewinding and slowing the action proved their suspicion. Walt was clearly reaching for her pocket with something in his hand. So, who was Walsh really? And what did all of this have to do with the man Isabel shot? The detective laying in the hospital had the answers, and the Buchanans were determined to get him to talk. Michael couldn't wait around for the answers to any of those questions. Isabel was in danger, and he had to get to her. He gathered his gear and took off for the airport. He didn't have any doubt at all that Noah would get him a seat on a flight. As he was striding into the airport, he received a text giving him the name of the airline, the flight number, and his seat assignment, 2A. Michael was also certain that by the time he arrived in Edinburgh, Nick and Noah would have found Isabel and gotten protection for her. In the meantime, Nick had gone to his office and gathered a team of agents to aid in the search. He then called Detective Samuel and read him what was on the flash drive, followed by an emailed copy. Samuel was outraged on Isabel's behalf, but he was also furious with Nick because he hadn't checked the flash drive the minute he saw it. Nick didn't defend himself. Samuel was right. He should have checked it, no matter how bloody it was. Isabel thought the flash drive was filled with songs she had written, so he had assumed the same. Why wouldn't he believe her? He wasn't investigating her, for God's sake. Still, no amount of justification made his guilt any less. On Nathan's Bay, the atmosphere was tense as Dylan waited to get word that Isabel was safe. He had stayed on the island so that he could explain it all to Kate and be there when her sister finally decided to call. Isabel had no idea of the turmoil she was causing. It had been a long 24 hours, and she was worn out. She had slept only an hour at the most on the plane. Then she went through quite an ordeal at the airport when she was recognized by a tour group of teenagers on their way to a football match. Why they needed to shriek was beyond her. It only drew more attention as other travelers joined the spontaneous fan club. She signed autographs and hurried out of there as quickly as possible. By the time she was seated in the car she had rented under Dylan Buchanan's name, the company had his credit card on file. Her nerves were frayed. Fortunately, an hour outside of Edinburgh, she found a charming hotel with available rooms. After she checked in, and, due to an unfortunate little mishap, asked where the nearest auto body shop was located, she went up to her room and got ready for bed. She seems like she had an accident with the people's car. The car she rented, she nicked it somehow. Cause here now she was looking for a body shop. It wasn't until she was plugging her phone charger in that she realized she hadn't turned her phone on. As soon as she did, she was shocked to see that there were at least 20 calls and just as many texts. There was even a call from Detective Samuel. She assumed he wanted to thank her for the concert tickets and put them last on her callback list. Barely able to keep her eyes open, she decided she'd read the text and answer everyone tomorrow. She did take the time to text Kate and Dylan and tell them where she was staying tonight. Then she turned off her phone again and got into bed. Could a person be too exhausted to sleep? Isabel's mind wouldn't quiet down, and she tossed and turned for a long while. When she did fall asleep, it was only for an hour or two. She finally crashed just as the sun was coming up, and she slept like a dead until noon. A hot shower revived her, and by the time she was dressed, she was ready for what was left of the day. First on her agenda was to plan her route to Donruss and Glen McKenna. She had picked up a travel guide at the airport and opened it to a map that highlighted all of Scotland's points of interest. She was looking forward to taking side trips to some of those places. Since she wasn't on a schedule, she could take her time exploring. At some point in her travels, she would call the solicitor for Glen McKenna and let him know when she had arrived. Until then, she was free to wander. She called room service and ordered breakfast. then took a pen and pad from the bedside table and began to make a list of the sights she wanted to see. Just as she was reading about the history of Stirling Castle, she was interrupted by a knock on the door. Impressed that room service was so efficient, she put down her pen and went to answer. Her mouth dropped open when she looked through the peephole. She couldn't believe what she was seeing, so she looked again. He hadn't vanished, and he wasn't a figment of her imagination. Michael Buchanan was standing on the other side of the door. Speechless, she unlocked the deadbolt, removed the chain, and opened the door. She was so dumbfounded, she could only stare up at him. When she finally found her voice, she didn't mince words. There's just no getting away from you, is there? Oh my God. Michael has found Isabel all the way in Scotland. All right, that's how we're going to end the reading for today, my friend. That was rather interesting. When we come back tomorrow, we will continue the reading. We will be on to chapter 22 of the book, Grace Under Fire. Join me then, won't you? As we read more about Isabel and Michael's love story. Until next time, my friends, this is Trev from Treversens, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, everybody.